The U.S. Capitol had hosted countless hearings before, but none like this. The Senate Judiciary Committee chamber, usually filled with dry legal debates and bureaucratic tones, was electric with anticipation. It wasn't just a hearing. It was a battlefield with red velvet seats, cold marble floors, and a storm brewing beneath every polished desk. The gallery was full veterans and uniformed reporters with notepads clenched in their laps, political aides scanning their phones for cues. The lighting was bright and sterile, but nothing could sterilize the tension in the room. You could feel it in your throat, tight, dry waiting. Then came the moment. Former President Donald J. Trump sat at the center, like a king brought before his own court. His suit was immaculate, his tie sharp red, his face tight with contained fury. For 10 seconds he was silent, letting the room simmer. Then he leaned forward toward the mic, eyes blazing, and shouted, "This woman is a traitor to the United States. Arrest her. Now!" The words hit like a wrecking ball. At first silence, then chaos. In the back rows, Trump's MAGA loyalists erupted. They stood, some with hands in fists, shouting in rhythm, "Lock her up! Lock her up!" The chant thundered across the chamber, bouncing off the marble and steel like war drums. A scene that was supposed to be civil had instantly mutated into something darker, something primal. Democratic aides glanced nervously at each other. Republican senators shifted in their seats, some smug, others uncertain. But the veterans seated up front stayed still. Their postures were upright. Their eyes didn't blink. They weren't just watching Jasmine Crockett, they were measuring her. They had seen chaos before. What they hadn't seen was how she'd respond. In the press box, cameras swung into position. A CNN producer whispered into her headset, "Zoom in. Don't cut. Hold on her face." The image beamed to 41 million households in real time. A country divided was now watching one woman caught in a firestorm of accusation and rage. But Jasmine didn't blink. She didn't rise. She didn't look around. She sat there, spine straight, hands folded on the desk, her face unreadable. Not frozen, not shaken, just still. There was something terrifying about her stillness. Because it wasn't passive, it was powerful, and it was planned. Trump smirked, thinking he had won this round, delivered his punchline, and silenced her with national humiliation. But Jasmine's silence said something louder. "You just made your move. Now it's my turn." And she didn't need to say a word to make America lean in. For exactly 33 seconds, Jasmine Crockett didn't move, didn't blink, didn't speak. She just looked straight ahead at the man who had just accused her of treason, as if his words had bounced off her like pebbles on steel. The air in the chamber thickened. The chants behind her roared louder. "Lock her up, lock her up," and yet she stayed still, perfectly still. A Fox News anchor whispered over the live feed, "She's not responding. Is she frozen?" A CNN commentator muttered, "What's her play here?" Millions watching from home were confused and captivated. This wasn't how political fights usually went. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't call for order. She didn't even reach for the mic. She just stared. And somehow in that silence, she became the loudest person in the room. The camera zoomed in. The red tally light blinked, burning like fire in the corner of the lens. Every viewer, no matter what side they were on, leaned closer. They were no longer asking, "Is Trump right?" They were asking, "Why is she not saying anything? What does she know?" Her eyes were sharp, not with panic, but precision, like a surgeon preparing for a cut, like a chess player 2 moves away from checkmate. Trump leaned back smug. He thought he had won the moment. But Jasmine, she had turned those 33 seconds into a countdown, and he never realized it. 6 weeks earlier, Jasmine Crockett sat alone in her congressional office. The city outside was moving, but inside everything was still. Stacks of reports were scattered across her desk, most of them routine, boring, but one folder, thin, tan, and marked FY 2025 VA adjustments, refused to sit quietly. She had read it 3 times. Something didn't add up. Veterans Affairs funding had been reallocated. On paper, it looked harmless. A few millions moved here, a few shifted there. But then the phone rang. It was a nurse from a VA hospital in South Carolina. Her voice cracked the moment she spoke. "Congresswoman, I don't know who else to call. They just told us we're losing all prosthetic support next month. We had to cancel surgeries. One of my patients, he served in Iraq, his leg is infected, and now he can't get the replacement limb." Jasmine sat upright. "Wait, what? I haven't seen anything about that in the official memos." The nurse continued, choking back tears. "We didn't either. No warning. Just a memo from the top. funding gone. It's like they're hiding something. It hit Jasmine like a gut punch. In all her years studying policy, she had seen budget tricks. But this felt deliberate, cold, coordinated. She asked for the memo. The nurse faxed it over. At the bottom of the page in small print was a reference code she didn't recognize. She called her chief of staff. I want you to cross-reference this code with every federal budget transfer in the last 6 months. I don't care how buried it is, find out where that money went. That night, Jasmine didn't go home. She didn't sleep. She stayed in that office high above Constitution Avenue, lit only by the blue-white glow of her laptop screen, reading highlighting digging. And somewhere around 3:42 a.m., she found it. Millions of dollars moved through 3 shell accounts redirected from veterans' healthcare into vague infrastructure development linked to unnamed private contractors. And one of those companies had direct ties to someone who used to sit in the Oval Office. Jasmine didn't scream. She didn't gasp. She just whispered to herself, "Oh my God, they did it." For the next 3 weeks, Jasmine Crockett became a ghost. She showed up for votes, smiled for cameras, attended briefings. But inside she was hunting. Late nights, encrypted emails, private meetings with whistleblowers in underground garages. She didn't trust anyone, not even her own party. Because if the money trail led where she thought it did, then the rot wasn't just deep, it was everywhere. She gathered documents, bank transfers, internal memos. Some were printed, others copied by hand. Each piece of evidence folded with precision, indexed, dated, all of it placed into a single black envelope, matte, heavy, sealed with a crimson sticker that bore no name, only a number 43. Why 43? That detail she kept to herself. The envelope never left her side. It traveled with her to work, sat in her purse during committee hearings, slept in a drawer next to her bed, like a secret waiting to detonate. Not even her aides knew what was in it. Only Jasmine knew, and she wasn't going to open it, not yet. Because this wasn't just about exposure. It was about timing. And when the moment came, when the world would be watching, that envelope would open and nothing in Washington would ever be the same again. What was inside it, only Jasmine knew. And she wasn't ready to share it. Not until the stakes were high enough to burn the house down. Trump thought he was in control. He had the cameras. He had the base. He had the floor. And most importantly, he thought he had her right where he wanted her. "You're a fraud, Jasmine," he barked, eyes narrowing. "You're not here for the people, you're here for yourself." Another loudmouth in a wig pretending to be a patriot. The room gasped. Republicans clapped. Some Democrats looked away. Cameras zoomed in, eager to catch her reaction. Would she fight back? Would she break? But Jasmine didn't blink. She didn't move. She simply tilted her head and let him keep going, and Trump, emboldened by the silence, made his mistake. He leaned forward. His voice dropped an octave. "You sit there with your little speeches and pretend to care about veterans, about the truth. But we know what you're really doing behind closed doors. You're part of the same corrupt machine, and I'm going to expose it." He smiled. He thought that was checkmate. But what he didn't know was that Jasmine had been planning this moment for weeks. She had anticipated every insult, every jab, every accusation. And just as he delivered his final blow, he unknowingly triggered the fuse. The trap had been set, and Trump, in all his bravado, had just pulled the pin. A sharp click echoed through the room. Jasmine didn't say a word. She reached into her bag, pulled out a small remote, and pressed play. The screen behind her lit up. Grainy footage, a hidden camera view. The image flickered, then steadied. A man in a black suit leaned over a private dinner table. Cigars, whiskey, laughter. Then the voice, familiar, undeniable, unmistakable. Sanctions don't matter if the payoff is big enough. The room froze. All eyes turned to Trump. He didn't move. "Wait," someone whispered. "Is that yes?" It was him. Donald J. Trump, captured on hidden audio, loud, clear, no edits, no voiceover, just him. The panel began to murmur. Senator Booker squinted at the screen, his jaw clenched. Reporters scrambled, phones raised. The news cycle detonated in real time. "What the hell is this?" someone shouted. But Jasmine stayed calm. Her voice, for the first time since the attack, cut through the noise. "That's the man who just called me a traitor." She stepped forward, eyes locked on Trump. But it turns out, the real betrayal didn't come from me. The screen faded to black, then lit up again, this time not with secret recordings, but a photo. A hospital room. Sterile. Cold. Dimly lit. On the bed, a man. Thin. pale, wearing a veteran's dog tag. Beside him, a little boy no older than 6 clinging to his father's limp arm. Machines beeped, a ventilator hummed. The caption beneath the image read, Michael Hayes, Army Sergeant, Afghanistan. Lost coverage 3 days after budget cut. A hush swept across the room. Jasmine stepped forward. Her voice didn't shake, but you could hear the weight behind every word. He served 2 tours overseas. He came home with PTSD shrapnel in his spine and a promise from this government that he and his son would be taken care of. She paused. That promise was broken the same week a $42 million foreign contract was signed under the same budget category that removed his benefits. The slide changed. Bank statements, timelines, signatures, all perfectly aligned. And at the bottom of the page, Donald J. Trump executive, sign off. Gasps echoed. One image, one veteran, one child. And suddenly every number in that budget, every policy line had a face. And that face was dying. The screen faded to black again. No music, no animation, just silence. Jasmine didn't pace. She didn't raise her voice. She just stood there, steady, centered eyes fixed on the room. And then she spoke. You can call it policy, I call it betrayal. Her voice was calm, controlled, but every syllable struck like a match in a room soaked in gasoline. When a father in uniform watches his benefits vanish while someone signs a billion-dollar deal with a foreign investor, that's not a budgeting error. That's not politics. That's a choice. She took a breath. And every time we call these decisions just numbers, we erase real families. We erase pain. We erase men like Michael Hayes. The room was dead quiet. A few staffers wiped their eyes. Even some members of the committee looked shaken. And that's when Jasmine looked straight into the camera, speaking not to the politicians anymore, but to America. I didn't come here to argue. I came here to remember the people this system forgets. Just when the room thought it had seen everything, something even more unexpected happened. A man in the second row, face covered by a black surgical mask, slowly stood up. No one had noticed him before. He wasn't on any list, no badge, no press credentials. But something about him, the calm posture, the way he stood with quiet authority, made people take notice. He pulled off the mask. Gasps echoed across the chamber. That's Caleb Morton, a name that once only floated in closed-door briefings in classified reports. Caleb Morton, senior national security advisor, formerly stationed at the White House, one of the most loyal operatives in Trump's inner circle, until he disappeared without explanation 18 months ago. Now he was back and walking slowly toward the front of the room. Trump's eyes narrowed. He didn't blink. Jasmine stepped aside. She didn't look surprised. She'd been expecting this. Caleb's voice was steady, unshaken. Mr. President, you know who I am. He turned to the committee. I was there in the room when the budget was manipulated. I was there when veterans were sold out for oil. I have the documents and the signatures. Another beat of silence. Then he opened his briefcase and laid it flat on the witness table. It's time America sees what really happened. The lights dimmed just slightly, not on purpose, but as if the room itself understood the gravity of the moment. Caleb Morton raised his right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? He didn't hesitate. I do. Then he leaned in toward the microphone. I was in the room. I saw, I heard, and I'm ready to speak. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents, not photocopies, not summaries, the originals. Contracts, wire transfers, internal memos, meeting notes with Trump's signature in bold ink. The cameraman zoomed in. The entire room leaned forward. America, watching live, held its breath. These are not theories. These are facts. I warned the administration. I was told to stay quiet. He paused, then looked directly at Trump. You told me it was for the good of the country, but what you meant was the good of your investors. A murmur ran through the room. The committee chair whispered, Mr. Morton, are you saying the president knowingly redirected veteran benefits into private oil deals? Caleb nodded once. Yes, and I can prove it with every page right here. For the first time, Trump's hand trembled. Boom, Trump slammed his hand on the table. Fake news, lies, all of it. This is a Democratic setup, it's a hoax. But the fire in his voice didn't match the look in his eyes. His lips curled in fury, but his voice trembled. Sweat ran down the side of his face. His collar, usually perfect, was unbuttoned at the top. The camera caught it all in high definition. Jasmine said nothing. She didn't have to. Caleb Morton stood silently beside the stack of evidence. The committee chair didn't blink. Even the MAGA supporters behind Trump, usually the loudest, had gone still. The president reached for his phone, his reflex. But the Wi-Fi had been shut off in the chamber. No tweets, no Truth Social, no escape. This is war, he muttered to himself. He pointed at Jasmine again. She planned this, but the finger that once commanded millions now just shook in midair. No one shouted in support. No chants, only silence. The empire wasn't falling in a blaze. It was melting slowly, painfully in front of the nation. The room was frozen in silence. Then from the right side of the committee, a voice. Soft, calm, controlled. If any of this is true, we must investigate. Heads turned. It was Senator Victoria Kane, a staunch Republican, known for voting in line with Trump 98% of the time. Her statement hit like a bomb. Trump whipped his head around, eyes wide, jaw clenched. Victoria, he growled. But she didn't look at him. She looked at the documents. She looked at the photos. She looked at Caleb Morton, then Jasmine. I'm not here to defend a man. I'm here to defend the country. The room shifted. You could feel it. Republican aides whispered. A second GOP senator looked visibly shaken. Even Fox News reporters in the back row began writing faster. Something had cracked not just in the story, but in the armor of loyalty that once seemed unbreakable. It began with a chant, truth over treason, truth over treason. One voice, then 10, then the entire chamber echoed. Trump stood up, his face red, jaw locked tight, swinging as he shoved his chair back. He pointed at no one because no one was listening anymore. He stormed out of the chamber. Cameras followed him all the way to the hall, but nobody followed behind him. He left alone. Back inside the chamber, all eyes turned to Jasmine. She didn't stand. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She simply opened her notebook and wrote something down calmly, steadily, as if the storm had passed and she was already moving forward. A woman alone, but never more powerful. In that quiet moment, she had become the symbol of what it means to stay when truth is under fire. It was evening. A massive crowd had gathered outside the Capitol. Over 10,000 people holding candles, flags, and signs that read, truth over treason. Jasmine spoke now. It's our turn. Honor our vets. Expose the lies. Jasmine stepped onto the small stage wearing no makeup, no political armor, just a simple black suit and a microphone. The crowd fell silent. She looked over the sea of faces. Old veterans, young students, nurses, factory workers, families. And then she spoke. When truth is called treason, that's when patriots must raise their voices. Her voice didn't shake. It was calm, fierce, steady. I didn't come here today to tear anyone down. I came here to lift up those who've been stepped on, lied to, and left behind. Michael Hayes died without his medicine. His daughter never heard his voice again. That wasn't a political decision. That was betrayal. The crowd blinked back tears. Then she paused just for a breath and asked, if you were sitting in my chair and you had the envelope and you saw what I saw. She looked up. Would you speak if it were you? The silence was electric. Then one person clapped, then 10, then the entire square erupted in applause, cheers, and tears. It wasn't about parties anymore. It was about courage and the cost of silence. The storm had passed, but the war was not over. Investigations were launched, hearings scheduled, and one by one names that once seemed untouchable began to appear in subpoenas. But in the minds of millions watching that day, what stayed wasn't just the scandal or the collapse of silence in the Capitol. What stayed was a face, a voice, a question, and a woman who answered it with courage. Jasmine Crockett wasn't trending anymore. She wasn't being interviewed by every network. She wasn't even in the headlines. But in veterans' homes, schools, churches, and union halls, her name was whispered with respect. Not just Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, but she who stood when others sat, she who spoke when others hid, she who stayed when power walked out. And that's how legacies are born. Not with fire, not with vengeance, but with quiet, unshakable resolve when the world needs it most. This wasn't the end of a battle. It was the beginning of a movement. Truth doesn't need volume. It needs someone brave enough to stand beside it. In a world where the powerful often use noise to hide their guilt, it only takes one person's silent courage to speak for the voiceless. Jasmine Crockett didn't win because she was the most powerful person in the room. She won because she had conviction, compassion, and the courage to stand when others sat down. The lesson for us is clear. Don't wait until you're in power to do what's right. Don't assume one voice can change anything, because sometimes one voice is all it takes. If this story moved you, if you believe truth deserves a voice, then don't let this be just another video you scroll past. Subscribe now, because more stories like this are coming, and you deserve to hear them.